And speaking of that, I did have a question in here I wrote just as a side note, and I was wondering if you guys could help me with it because I don't fully understand it. So I'm going to call upon y'all. I wrote down here, what is the significance of the guard? And I'm sure I was taught this in Sunday school at some point, but I could relearn it. What is the significance of the guard giving him the sponge filled with wine vinegar? Is there some special meaning to him getting a drink after God turns away from him in scripture? And then Jesus, after tasting the wine, gives up his spirit. Is there something biological with it? And I'll just read again 19 and then 20 verses 28 29. Later, knowing that everything had been finished, this is after God turned away because of the sin, and so that scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted Jesus' lips. So I just want to know what the significance is that, because I was listening to the song last night, I was looking up verses, and this stood out to me. I was just like, what is this? What does this mean? Is there any, what's the significance of it?
Well, one thing, there's kind of a cool little historical thing in there is that wine vinegar or the sour wine that the guards would have offered up to him is a particular beverage that was essentially vinegar. But it was made specially as a beverage for soldiers. Romans, it was basically vinegar, and they kind of watered it down a little bit so it wasn't just, pure vinegar. Because it was basically, wine that was let sour into vinegar, and then they watered it down a little bit. And that was actually a lot of times what Roman soldiers, that's what they had to drink. That's what was issued to them as a beverage for when they were, on duty. So it's kind of interesting that the soldiers were basically offering Jesus up some of their own, what they had on hand. They're like, he's thirsty. What do we got? Oh, we got some of our vinegar stuff that we drink. Here, give that to him, kind of a thing. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of in my mind, it kind of humanizes the Romans a little bit in the story. Right. They could obviously see the great extent to which he was suffering, and it moved even them. People who were used to, people dying on crosses, because crucifixion was a common form of execution in Roman times. And the fact that they could see his suffering, and it even moved them to the point where, let's give this guy something to drink.
He's been through enough.
Yeah, it kind of, it really, I think, helps drive home kind of what he was going through.
Yeah.
What do you think, Stephen?
I didn't really have an answer for this, but David has a good point. There's so often that throughout history we've alienated or otherized the other side of whatever we're on. Whether there's always a good guy and a bad guy, and it doesn't mean that the entire nation of Germany were evil slaughterers during World War II. That's not the case. There are human people, and even those who had government positions, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are evil with evil intentions. It's Wreck-It Ralph. Just because I am bad guy, it doesn't mean that I am bad guy. It's it does humanize those guards. And reading that passage in the Bible, that's always what I've felt from that scene, is just oh man, Jesus can't be that, or the Romans can't be that bad if, they'll give Jesus a drink, right?
Well, I think it's the idea of, and you touched on it too, David, is the idea that love conquers all. And I mean, heck, it says it in the song right here. It says, love has triumphed over death forever. And love triumphs over many, many a thing in life. And the fact that it even overcame death in the act of that as well. So I don't know. I was pondering about it last night, and I just was wondering what we all thought of that. And I'm sure Thad's probably thinking to himself right now, man, guys, I have the answer. I wrote it down in my notes for next podcast. Like, come on, guys.
Well, listeners, maybe you have an answer.
Yeah, maybe
for
you
us.
have an answer.
Hey, Finglers, right in and give us our.
God, did I put an R on it? What I said Fangles.
Maybe not a hard R. But,
well, with that, let's go to track 10, the final track.
Let's go.
Moving on.
Moving on.